This is a Religica production. Religica.
Why don't we begin with your story? So many of us don't live in the places where we were born. Where were you born? And where do you call home today?
My home is the Buddhist temple located in downtown Seattle itself. Every day, people who have sufferings visit the temple. And my wish is when they leave the temple, their burdens have become lighter than before. And to help those people is my role in this society. So our temple is my home.
Your temple is home. There's also a way in which people find, in terms of how they're relieved, they find a new home inside themselves and in their community and at the temple. Is there something you'd like to say about its Shingon Buddhism, form of Japanese Buddhism, that you'd like to say about Shingon Buddhism?
Yes, our religion is Shingon Buddhism and categorized as Japanese Vajrayana Buddhism in this country. Also, our Buddhism is philosophy and religion.
Both.
I right.
See. In what way are they both?
Because Buddhism itself is one's way of living. And also, so in that regard, Buddhism gives us very deep philosophy to live one's life well. At the same time, we put importance on our prayers. In that regard, we are very religious, very prayer. We believe the power of prayer. In that regard, we are very religious.
What's your concern about a world that's forgotten how to be sacred?
My fear is the world or the society or people give up to be enlightened, or give up one's effort to find a Buddha nature in others. And also, my fear is people give up their effort finding Buddha nature even in himself or in herself. So in Buddhism, a lovely bud of lotus flower is a famous symbol of your Buddha nature.
I might see this in a painting. I've seen a number where you'll have a
kind
of bed of lotuses.
Right.
Floating in a pond or in some form of protected area.
Right.
Each one of us has this bed of lotus flowers.
Right.
Potential areas of blooming inside of us.
Right.
I'd like to ask you in light of that about two of the main tenets of Buddhism that I see, but I'd like to hear your perception of both beauty and hope. I sense beauty and hope in this image of the lotus. Can we start with beauty?
It's simply beautiful. And also, when one's Buddha nature is blooming, the most beautiful moment. So this metaphor is very appropriate. And each one of us has such a beautiful thing in yourself, in myself. That's why we couldn't be violent to others.
Present anxieties could be a nutrient for tomorrow's hope.
Yes, I believe so.
Let me ask about the global context. We see a lot of suffering happening right now in the world.
Yeah.
When you see that in our families, in our cities, in our country, and in the world, how do you respond to suffering? How must we respond to suffering?
So you are talking about the sufferings in the modern society?
It's a good question. I wonder if suffering in the modern society is the same as suffering 1,000 years ago or 2,000 years ago, or if suffering is different today as you're seeing it in the world. Do we suffer differently?
I think so, because in this modern society, we seems to have quick solutions. Those modern technologies seems to solve our problems. But this is illusion. Our sufferings cannot be solved with such an easy way, just being accumulated. We avoid to face our sufferings.
There are people listening to this who will know precisely what you're talking about from their own lives. This sense of, in a daily way, being sliced into to the point of one's even different forms of death. One of those being a kind of giving up, as you mentioned earlier, an ambivalence. Or what would you say to those listeners who understand in their lives what you just mentioned? What's their source of hope?
First of all, you yourself has to do the opposite thing. I mean, give positive words, smiley facial expressions. And so it means you are bodhisattva. A bodhisattva is a being who continues one's effort to help others every day. So it means you are piling up your good karma. So even little by little, the environment surrounding you is getting better if you yourself is a giver. You don't necessarily have to give money or materialistic things to others, but even your smiles, kind words to others.
And I can't give back violence for violence, can I? And that's, if I return anger with anger, I'm participating in that slicing up, killing process we're talking about, aren't I?
Right. It's very difficult.
Yeah.
If you can run away from that situation, it's good. But the most of times, we cannot run away from our classroom, our working place, our neighborhood.
Sometimes our partner, our relationship. That happens too. With pain in our relationship.
Yeah, that's true. So we have to be patient. We have to be patient because that your patience could be nutrition to make your flower bloom in the future. But at the same time, if your heart is really sliced up, it's too late. So how much you should be patient is very sensitive, because sometimes after the result, people may commit suicide.
So in abusive situations, for instance, sometimes leaving.
Right.
Often in those abusive situations, when we can leave, that's the choice to make.
Right.
And to do that is also a way of, it's protecting yourself, but in a number of different ways. One of those being that heart you're talking about.
Right. So,
which is really our being, right? It's not the physical heart. I hear it's connected, but this sense that things can deconstruct us.
Right. I think, the the city or county, those official places must have place for you to run away to. I don't know exactly what departments are, but as far as I know, it's good to come to like Christian churches or those religious places or Buddhist temples, Islam or Judaism or Buddhist temples.
Mm-hmm.
I think I believe the power of religion. So when you feel you shouldn't be patient anymore, I believe this is good to visit those religious,
To seek that help there.
right, places.
Let me ask one more question. How mature must one be to acquire enlightenment today?
To be enlightened, you don't have to acquire something from outside of you. Please imagine that a lovely bud of lotus flower is naturally blooming. So, being enlightened is being blooming. And the bud of lotus flower, the possibility to be enlightened, is already inside of you. Please don't doubt that. Please don't give up blooming someday in the future.
That brings us to the end of the interview. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
This podcast was made possible by Religica Allies.